Hey everyone, Joe here today for What's Cracking, and we've got a repeat. That's right, a repeat guest. We've got Dr. Randy Overbeck. Pleasure to have you again. It's been a minute, and you look fantastic. You don't age.
I'm sure I do age, but I'm delighted to be back. There's always a lot happening in my area, so that's great.
It looks like it, and we know we have a new book out, Abigail Trench. And if correct me if I'm wrong, this is actually something not paranormal or mystery for you.
It is a departure from the thriller and mystery, paranormal mysteries I've done thus far, an amateur sleuth mystery. There
Right.
are lots of elements of mystery, suspense, and thriller in this book, but no paranormal elements.
So
That
what made you change? What's with new genre? It looks like historical. I mean, it's the
it's, it's listed as the distributor Simon and Schuster listed it as historical thriller or historical suspense. One of those
I
two.
love it. I love that, and that's actually my jam. Honestly, when I read, that's what I love to read as well. What made you go from one genre and shift to a semi-related, but not entirely, because there's no paranormal. It's historical. There's more research involved. What made
Yeah.
you do that shift?
Well, and I have always been intrigued by history, and particularly history of the American Revolution.
Right.
I've read a lot of books about this particular period of time, and both fiction and nonfiction, and it intrigued me. And when I uncovered this particular story that's in my book called Abigail Trench, I realized the story's never really been told. So, for those who are not that in tune with the Revolutionary War issues, there was a spy ring called the Culper Ring,
Yes.
Culper, Culper Ring, that was organized by George Washington. And it actually, there's evidence that it helped win the Revolutionary War with making some pivotal information for George Washington from the British. And that ring consisted of six men and one woman, and the identities of those individuals were kept so secret that the sixth man in the of the six, his identity wasn't uncovered until 1930s,
Wow.
150 years later, and they have never been able to find out. There's no historical agreement on who the woman is.
Really?
So I decided to create a fictional character to step into those shoes, and it was really interesting opportunity to blend history with captivating fiction.
That's amazing. One of my teachers in Binghamton was Jack Vernon, and he does historical fiction. That's why it was really part of my interest as well. And from my point of view, from remembering, it's you do your research. You have to do due diligence. You research it as it's a true paper. You know, you're writing a PhD where it's going to be. You research that way, and then the what if would come. Did you have the what if first, or did you research and then go, I wonder?
I think I think it happened halfway in between. So
Right.
I wasn't at this point researching. I was reading about the Culper Ring. I had read several of the books about the Culper Ring. There's a couple of books out, and there's only just a little brief hints. One historical author suggested could be this person. One suggested could be
Right.
another person. And I just thought, well, now there's an interesting story. And one of the reasons that I wanted to tell it, especially in this period of time, is kind of to highlight the fact that the revolution came about not just because of George Washington and Thomas Jefferson, Alexander
Right.
Hamilton, and Benjamin Franklin. It came about because of everyday people that were working in the shadows, that were fighting the battles, all those
Yeah.
kinds of things. And I think it's kind of important to remember that it's not all about the leaders that we've been taught for 250 years. It's about a lot of other people made made that change possible.
Yeah, that made the sacrifices. There's a line
Yes,
in Shakespeare, "Who died today? No one of importance." Right?
yeah,
It goes back to
that's
that. Like, well, obviously, those one who fought your battles for you. The lords and the kings rarely do.
right.
Washington being exceptions. We see through this, and then you focused on who the woman was, who the woman was, who the woman was. Was that something that called to you? There's just for a personal, I can't figure this out, or what was the draw for that one? Because the other ones are still relatively unknown.
Yeah, well, and actually, I will tell you up front that Abigail Trench is the first of 4 books
Okay.
that are in the cycle. My second one is going to the publisher in another couple months. So
Oh,
this is. Did I start that way? No,
right,
I was just fascinated by this unknown woman. All we really know about her, there in the historical record, there are several times where she is referred to as the lady. That's all that's
right,
in the, and then each of the Culper Ring individuals were given a number. Even George Washington had a number, and her number was 355. So there are several times where it was listed as 355 provided this information. And then all the only other things we know about her is that she had access to high level British officer information
Hmm.
and fed that to the Culper Ring on several critical occasions. So I put those pieces together with a fictional character and came up with a way that she might have been able to overhear these secrets
right.
in a way that would be not suspicious. And then the story took off from there.
And the one of the coolest things about this, because there's so, from a writer's point of view, because there's such few documentations on this obviously secret ring itself, and no one really knows who she is. Do we know, not so much in your books, but historically, do we know the ending to her? Probably not.
Oh, we don't. In fact, she as I referred, there's several of these mentions of this the lady in 355, and then some of the later dispatches from the Culper Ring. There's no mention of her.
Right.
One historian took that to mean that she was captured, and then executed. That's kind of hard to believe because what the British did at that point, anytime that they had an opportunity to do something egregious, they did it in public. They wanted
Yeah.
everybody to know.
It wouldn't be private. This would be very much.
Yeah. So it's unlikely. Now she could, that if he were here arguing with me, he said, well, she could have been thrown in prison and died in prison. Bigamy. Those are all possible. It's not the scenario I drew up, and I would argue that mine's probably just as plausible. Although at the very beginning of the book, I explained to readers this is fiction. It's
Right.
not it's not historical scholarship. This is fiction, even though I've worked really hard to include lots of details that we have from the historical record about the fire in New York, about the
Right.
assassination of George Washington, about the hanging of Thomas Hickey, and lots of other things that I've woven into the manuscript. But the bottom line is, it's still a story. It's still just a fun way to explore what life was like in 1776.
And that's the key to it. It has to be a fun way. It has to be an interesting way. And I think that's where some historical novels go wrong or awry. They skew on the side of historical documentary, but they're not. They're not. That's a nonfiction over there. And so they lean too heavily on that side without going, oh, yeah, well, I can actually be a fiction writer as well. So I know you came from the paranormal mystery world. Did those skill sets as an author help you flesh out the fiction side of this?
Well, yes, I think so. I mean, for those who know my books, whether you're talking about my amateur sleuths mystery or the paranormal mysteries, there's a great deal of research that goes into those books. So
Right.
my most recent book is Red Shadows of Saugatuck. I had to do a great deal of research about the native culture. It's about the disappearance of Indian girls,
Right.
and that was something completely unknown to me. So I had to actually immerse myself. I met with tribal leaders, and I did everything I could to learn the reality of what that was like, as well as researching the town, all that. Anyway, my point is, all of that kind of prepared me for
Yeah.
the next leap up in terms of research to make this book authentic. So even though it's fiction, the reader will feel like he's really walking the streets of New York City in 1776. The
Right.
reader will feel the heat of the fire that happened in New York City. They'll be in the room with Benedict Arnold when they're plotting his defection. So that was my goal.
That's amazing. And one of the things, okay, we both have PhDs and we both know what it takes to make one.
Right.
And I don't think either of us would get that far without being able to research. It's just not possible in our,
Right.
in our academics. That skill set that we take from other parts of our lives apply directly to the craft of writing, where I think more people could benefit that true scholarly look at it. And for those of you at home, most of us here at Benedict Arnold, we know the name and we kind of get, oh, he's a traitor. That's all we get. But we don't know the setup. We don't know the why. People didn't just, okay, turncoat is also from that era. They didn't just turncoat because it's not like an episode on TV where like, oh, he's a random bad guy today. There has to be a setup. There has to be a reason why. There has to be humanity to him. And in like seeing books like yours, and that's exactly it, right?
Well, you're setting me up because so what I've tried to do in both this book and the second book, which is almost finished, is to tell both sides of the story. So in this book, there's actually two narrators, two POVs. The first, of course, is Abigail Trench,
Right.
who is a teacher who comes to America to teach in a small town school. The school gets closed because the British attack the town and people leave. So she's trying to find a way to support herself. I'll make a long story short. She finds her way into as a tutor in a rich British officer's house, which is how she ends up becoming privy to secrets. I tell the story of the British from that British officer's point of view as well.
There you go.
So there's two parallel stories going on at the same time that intersect several times throughout, but it also gives a sense of what it was like for a principled British officer who came over to the Americas to fight to put down what they thought was an insurrection.
Insurrection, yeah. And that gives it more weight. For me, that gives it the flesh. Other things that we see, some period pieces, especially like even like the Dooley historical, are the bones. They're missing the sinews and the flesh. They're missing the actual muscle. And the people become caricatures instead of a living person. And especially for historical realism, they were living people. And sometimes authors don't do them justice. I'm so glad you do. And this is from both sides. It's an interesting way of telling the story.
And as we were talking about Benedict Arnold, so in the second book, I've done the same thing. Only it's told from the primary POV is another member of the Culper Ring, an individual called Culper Jr., who has a minor role in my first book. His name is Robert Townsend.
Right.
But the second POV is from Major Andre. Okay, Major John Andre. And Major John Andre is one who's, quote, credited with turning Benedict Arnold. So you get the entire story of that turncoat from when Benedict, and most people don't know this, but Benedict Arnold was the most successful general in the Revolutionary War in the first 2 years of the Revolutionary War. He won more battles than anyone else for the colonials. So I wanted to take him from that to what everybody knows him as, the despicable traitor.
And that's the whole point of it. When we are hearing his turncoat from modern film, the turncoats are always the outcasted people who didn't win much. You see the movie 300, for example. The turncoat is the guy that's like, get away from us. It wasn't the sex boss. You can't be one of us. It was always the outcast that they treated poorly. No. In this one, like, no, like historically, like you just said, he was on a major winning streak. It's kind of like, I'm a huge Laker fan. It's like Kobe Bryant going to the Clippers. Like, you can't have that. Like, it's like it's your major star doing this. It's not just some role player. Like, this is big. This is huge.
And that's how I tried to balance in the second book. Again, we're seeing this from Major Andre, who, from all indications, seemed to be a really good guy. Major John Andre, and what his role was in terms of trying to catch spies, all of that. I think it's a captivating story, elements of which most people don't know anything about.
It's interesting.
And that was deliberate because we don't really have any understanding of this. In those days, in their day, being a spy, if you are a Briton, being a spy is just a notch above being a murderer or a robber.
Yeah.
It was considered very despicable behavior, very dishonorable. And to the British at that time, nothing was more important than your honor.
Yeah.
So most everybody involved in that game, what we would call a game, didn't want anyone else to know. They didn't. In fact, nearly all of these, none of their families knew that Robert Townsend's family, in reality, never knew what he did.
Man.
We only learned that Culper Jr. So we have lots of dispatches of
Right.
messages from Culper Jr. that ended up in George Washington's files. So we matched his handwriting from those dispatches to personal handwriting from we did a historian
Oh, the
did
historic way.
uh, of personal handwriting of Robert Culper, and that's how or Robert Townsend. That's how we discovered he was Culper Jr.
And that is the part where if people wonder why education is important, if people wonder why, like, oh, all these academic, that's why you're discovering connections that were always there, just waiting to be uncovered. And if no one looks, they remain dark, right? And
Right.
by uncovering these things, we learn more about our history, our culture as Americans, because even though I'm currently in Ottawa, I am American. And I think that's what's missing a bit from today, that realizing we come from a shared culture of the United States of America, right?
And it's it's kind of helpful in today's political culture to recognize that uh, the people that we idolize were all flaming radical liberals at the time.
Overthrowing, yeah, governments and stuff, right?
Well, I was taught in my American history classes that this was, when the Declaration of Independence came out and people were rallying around it, the best historical records indicate that somewhere between only 30 to 40% of the people wanted an independent country.
Yeah,
Most people wanted to remain with England, but have some level of autonomy. That was what they really wanted.
yeah, which is, as we will call it, the Scottish problem currently. Like they're like,
Exactly. Yep.
we don't want to
That's
be
yep.
independent. We just want more autonomy to do what we need to do.
The
And
irony is this. So this is in my book, but this is really fascinating.
yeah,
The, the leaders, the colonial leaders, sent a request specifying exactly that in 1774 to Parliament. We want to remain part of the empire. We want to remain British, but we want to elect our own people. We want to enact our own taxes. We want to, and the
right.
Parliament said, "Screw you! But no,
Oh,
you need to pay back for everything we've put into this." Anyway, 3 years later,
yeah,
Parliament changed their mind and said, "Okay, now we'll give you that." But by that time, there was too much bloodshed, too many
yeah,
battles had happened, and now the colonial leaders were no longer interested in doing that. It's an interesting, I mean, because it could have come that close.
yeah. What was the old saying? Like, all the war usually comes down to the same thing in the beginning: sitting down and talking.
Yeah,
Like you
right.
could have skipped the middle part and just
Yep.
did it then, and I wouldn't have to look for a different passport to go to Ireland now. But that's the interesting part. 'Cause, I grew up and it was like the same thing. We were taught in civics class that usually a small percentage actually wanted this, and only a few people came to the things, and they couldn't decide, and all things like that. But we didn't. I had no idea that they sent their not really demand, the request to have self governance instead
Yeah.
of and not leave the empire, but just be more self sustainable.
Which,
It's
in fairness to Britain, okay, now Britain at that point had colonies all over the world, in India and Ceylon, and in the South America, in the Caribbean, and Ireland was part. None, no other place had self governance.
The sun never sets on the
This
British
is a
Empire.
brand new, yeah, the sun never sets on the British Empire. So for the Britons, for the Americans to ask that, they're going, what? Well, if we give that to you, everybody will want that. We can't have you do that.
Yeah.
So, but and you know, one of the things of our writers group says you have to learn all this stuff, even if you don't end up putting it in the book, because it helps inform what the actual narrative becomes.
Yeah, the research isn't always go into the book. That's absolutely correct and great advice. Helps you formulate the rationale the characters take.
Right.
It fleshes them out as a full character. And you said writers group. Now I'm going to shift to the me giving congratulations and stuff like that. I know, I know, I know, I know. And you said it. Who's your publisher?
The publisher is a publisher called Diversion Books, and the distributor is Simon and Schuster.
Simon
I'm
Schuster.
I'm
Yeah,
really excited. They're just it's a big jump up from I the other my other previous 5 books were published by Wild Rose Press, which is a wonderful small press in New
amazing.
York,
Yeah,
and they do a great job. But I'm thrilled to be, the next step up in terms of mainstream, one of the main
and getting
publishers.
Simon and Schuster, and you're still, for people that don't know, it can go any direction for publishing and any direction for distributing, to like independence, to doing the small publishing, to Simon and Schuster, and there's always that little step ladder, right? And you're
Right?
still going to writers groups though.
Oh yeah, and I'll be honest, but I have a really great writers group. I don't think my work would be near as good without the input. We meet every week, and whoever has work puts up work to share, and the other 3, 4, 5, 6 members in the group then critique your work and give you feedback.
Yeah, it's
And they
invaluable.
always see things that I don't see. They have ideas I wouldn't have. It's always it helps make it a notch better. I don't have any doubt about that.
Yeah, it's great to do a writers group. I do support writers groups. It's one of the things I miss going through university was our writing classes were basically writers groups every semester. Like
Yeah,
you had to do this and you had to get feedback and you learn how to take feedback and give feedback. It's one of those items where if you're writing and you're like, I'm writing a book and you're not getting feedback along the way, well, that's 75,000 words that might not sustain itself. That's
yep,
100,000 words that might not. They could have caught early by
right,
getting feedback on chapter two, you
right,
know?
exactly. Yep,
So I'm so glad you're saying that, because even folks, even people as successful as Randy with different genres and publishing with Simon and Schuster, I mean, all these things, still doing writing group.
oh, I submitted last week. I submitted one of my new chapters to the writing group and asked them for some help on, guys. Is it doing this? And the key to having a good writing group is you got to have people that aren't afraid to say that's not working. This part's great. This is just not accomplishing what you wanted to do. And I'm a little different than others. What I actually have 3 different levels of feedback to me before the novel gets to anybody that would revise. So the first level is the writers group. They're seeing it as it's being, I give them this chapter. They don't see the whole, because I think my newest book is at 65 chapters. They've probably seen 25 of them, but they see enough of it to give me direction. Next level is I have a group of beta readers. I have about a dozen beta readers, and they get the book in process. So they might get a third of the book or a half of the book, and then a whole book. And when they get it, they'll get a homework sheet with 6 questions that says that I'm a little concerned about this. Did you find any place where the book sagged? Did you? So I get that. That's my second level of feedback. And then the third level is I have a really great editor that does a diagnostic edit, not a line edit, but a diagnostic edit on the whole manuscript. And she'll see something that I had missed. She'll say, well, and this part needs this. All 3 of those are really critical for me to be able to get the book to what I consider to be the best thing I can put out. That's my goal.
And I smile because although I am missing the writers workshop, I've had one, pandemic happened, and it's on me. It's one of those. And the beta readers, yes, I am for one of the Isaac Thorne's books. I was his beta reader. I hope I didn't violate NDA. I think that was public knowledge, anyways. And that you get the homework sheet from the author. Like, how did this work out? All these little things we have questioned. Like, exactly it. You give the readers homework, and then you have Lucretia Grindle. She did mine, and looking at that, and not the line editing, but the actual, does this, plot wise, and all the little sparkle things that move. Yeah, people will pick out stuff that you didn't see in your head. I had someone say, like, who cares about this character? I'm like, well, didn't you read my last book? Like, no, 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 I didn't. Like, okay, now I need to front load some stuff. Now I know. And without these things, if it gets to the ARC status, like advanced reviewer copy status, it's too late to fix those. You
Right,
can
exactly.
fix some stuff, but the reviews are not going to be good. So I'm
And
so
one of my goals, Joe, is that I don't want to put anything out that isn't the very best I can do.
yeah,
You know, I think we talked about this beforehand, but in the first book of the Haunted Shore Mystery Series, I was so intent. I tried to get that to an agent, tried to get that to a major publisher, didn't succeed, but I ended up with Wireless Fest, which is fine. But I was so intent, I actually redid and rewrote the first chapter 14 different times. It took me 14 times to get it to where it was. This is exactly what I needed, and well, it worked. It won several awards, so it must have been the right thing to do.
it
But
must have been the right 14. Yeah,
yeah, yeah. Now, I
it's
haven't had to do that since then. Although there have been several chapters that, well, as you well know, I end up throwing a chapter out. I end up moving a chapter or switching this around. That's all part of what your responsibility is.
yeah, that's exactly it. Like throwing a chapter out, making it. I'm making mine a downloadable for after people that buy the book. Like, if you want to read more, here's a here's a chapter. I don't call the chapter I tossed out. I gussy it up more than that. Like, but that's basically it. Like the chapter at the end of the book, like, that's not how the book really ends. It's a short story now. Sure, same world. And that's exactly it. We have to be able to take advice from criticism, really, from fellow writers or readers and stuff like that. And you have to be able to shift at every level, because your mind will do you wrong. Your mind will tell you everything that's not in the book, but you think it
Right.
still is.
Yep.
Yeah.
Uh, and one of the strengths of our writing group is the people are all over the place in terms of genre. So one guy's a poet, one guy writes horror, another guy writes science fiction, another one writes mystery. I mean, so most people will say, "Well, I want to have a writers group with somebody who writes what I do." I find the fact that they come from a different perspective actually beneficial. They look at things with a fresh eye. The poet, he writes children's poetry, which is hilarious children's poetry, fantastic. I can't wait to see what happens to this book that he's finishing. But he'll see things from a different perspective, very globally about the chapter. Okay, another person will go, well, you missed these three details. This detail's not right, So I get all kinds of really valuable feedback because they're coming from a different direction.
No, that's brilliant and very correct. It's people who are. I just had an interview with someone earlier today, and if you go to a specialist, that's all they see. I use this. If we watch these podcasts out of order, a spoon sees the world as soup and ice cream, because that's all a spoon is for.
Yep.
It's not going to see it like, oh, a steak. Like, what's the steak? It can't.
Right.
So if it goes, okay, can I do with the steak? It goes into the steak and it starts seeing what the steak is, instead of like going, okay, soup and ice cream, I got this. It makes that critical judgment and allows you to see your book through someone else's eyes.
That's an interesting metaphor. That
Yeah,
works, I think.
yeah,
So
and
all of those pieces are all of what's required to be able to get the book to that particular. I'll tell you though, Joe, what has surprised me is that I I mean, I did get a decent advance. I did get some support, but if you're an author, you got to be out there doing everything that you would do for an indie book, even if you're published by Simon and Schuster. Doesn't make any difference.
yeah, exactly. That's one of the things. Like, exactly, people are like, oh, I can't wait to do this. Like, no, it's still a business. It's
Yeah.
still a
Yep.
business. They will spend money on their top 2, 3 authors, and they'll spend like, okay, we'll get you all this other stuff. We'll
That's
everyone
exactly
else
right.
is still a business.
If you're
It's
not,
still
what's it
another
called?
the ladder.
Yeah, I'm a mid-list author, so, but the Virgin books, I've been really pleased. It's a really, really great imprint. And prior to my book, they hadn't done fiction. So they've opened up a whole new fiction realm, and I kicked off their historical fiction division and stuff. So it's pretty exciting.
That is cool.
Yeah, and it's done so far. The reviews are off the charts. Uh, I think from a little information I get, that one of the real, as you know, one of the real frustrations as a writer is somebody asked me at a get together last night in the neighborhood. They said, "Well, hey, how's your book selling?" I'm going, "Well, I don't really know. I won't get the information for like 3 months or six
Yeah,
months. You don't really know anything." So
yeah. Ask me in November. You
yeah,
know?
right, exactly. But based on what little information I can get from Amazon, which is not much, it looks like it's doing really well. So
Yeah, and
knock
that's
wood.
so for Abigail Trench, where can we get this one?
Abigail Trench is available anywhere that you would get your books. It's at Books a Million, Barnes and Noble. It's right now. It's available as a print book and an ebook. The the publisher is working with a recorded books, or one of the. They're going to do an audio book, but it's not available yet.
I can't wait for the audio. Audiobooks are my drive, my commute. 100%. I can't wait for that.
All of my books are on audio up until this particular one.
Oh,
So
goodness,
uh,
sorry. I'm getting you
this
you
one,
just made me so happy. I'm getting
uh,
all the series right now.
I'm very excited, and I'm like you. I always have an audiobook in the car. When I'm out walking in the neighborhood, I'm listening to an audiobook.
Yeah, no. Or as I got made fun of saying before, books on tape,
Yeah, I still say books on tape.
right? It used to be in the Barnes and Noble shelf. You'd buy it with a book on tape, and
Books on tape. Yep.
yeah.
I was actually in the library the other day, and they still had books
Still,
on CD.
those are nice. I like that. Or
But
MP3.
everything I do now is pretty much downloadable from audio version. So
Same, same, same,
yeah,
same. And if we want to find you online, where do we find you, sir?
very easy. Check out my website, which is just www.authorrandyoverbeck.com. AUTHOR randyoverbeck.com. I also should put a plug in for my podcast. So I have a podcast called Great Stories About Great Storytellers. So it's about a 10 or 12-minute episodes about famous authors, directors, and poets. And I tell in my podcast the backstory that people don't know about their famous authors, directors, and poets. It's done really well. It's in 25. It was in the top 50% of all podcasts in the United States.
That's
Uh,
amazing. We're good storytellers.
Listen, any place you listen to podcasts, great stories about great storytellers.
Absolutely. And that's a sweet spot. It's a nice little jaunt. It's the morning breakfast. You're making coffee. You're using Tony Horton's Wake, Shake, and Activate. And it's a 10-minute boom and you're gone. It's a great story. I miss those. I grew up with
That's
Paul Harvey. That's why I miss those.
well, and I call this the rest of the story for authors, directors, and poets. So right now there's about 53 episodes up. I record one a month, so it's done really well.
Amazing, sir. And it's always a pleasure to have you. You're welcome back every time, anytime. I can't wait. Honestly, I can't wait for the series. This is my jam. I'm gonna get into it very much. And if you can get into it, Abigail Trench by Randy Overbeck. Go get it now. Don't be standing here. Go get it now. Okay, sir. Thank you for everything. It's been a
My
pleasure.
pleasure, Joe. It's good to talk to you again.
On behalf of myself and Dr. Randy Overbeck, we bid you good day. Bye, everyone.